You are listening to an MLGA Network podcast.
Hello, our Vixie listeners. This is Maddie here, your co-host of the Voluntary Vixens podcast. Jessie's with me as well. Hi, Jessie.
Hello.
So, we're coming out of the week of 9/11, and just because we are, it's a somber, tragic, and definitely historical moment in recent history, I wanted to take a moment to honor in silence those who are brain dead and still believe what the mainstream media is telling us.
Okay.
No longer with us.
Nope.
God help them. I don't know if I like that. All right. Camp, you can cut that if you want.
Welcome to Voluntary Vixens, where Jessie and Maddie give a female voice to news and pop culture with a libertarian twist. Join us to stay informed and challenged while keeping it sane, peaceful, and most importantly, voluntary.
Anyway, let's get started like normal people. Jessie, I'll let you start.
Okay. So we're coming into the weekend of 9/11, and we just kind of wanted to go over, just not really trying to preach at you this time, but mostly just kind of go over, how things like 9/11 happened and what changed afterwards, and are we any safer with what our government has put into place since 9/11?
Because never forget, it'll never happen again. So obviously everything our government has done since has, of course, only been put in place to make us safer, both at home and abroad. Right?
Oh, yeah. That's...
Big cheery fake smile here. I believe and trust my government.
Yeah. And let's see, what things have changed since 9/11 when you really think about it? I mean, it's hard. It may be harder for you, Maddie, because you were kind of young, so you don't really have a lot of remembering of what it was like to travel before. Because I did most of my overseas travel before 9/11, believe it or not. I went to England, and I definitely went to the Middle East before 9/11, which I can't even imagine what it's like now. But I do remember when I went to India in 1990, I think it was the summer of 1998 or 1999, I can't remember. But I remember the security in India trying to get back to America was ridiculous. I was like, this is crazy. I had to go behind a curtain and be felt up by some random woman who asked me all these questions about how I liked my trip to India while she's molesting me, basically.
Just a casual molestation.
Yeah.
Jessie, it's for your safety, so let the woman touch you in inappropriate places.
Yeah, I mean, we as Americans, we had never, I remember, we never experienced anything this, crazy before. And then, now, looking back at that time, how naive I was, because when 9/11 happened, that's exactly what traveling anywhere, even within the United States, is like. So, I mean, the last time I flew on a plane, I had to have the woman touch under my boobs and stuff like that. It was really uncomfortable.
So uncomfortable.
I just don't enjoy it. But so I try to avoid flying if I absolutely don't need to.
I mean, Ron Paul does.
Yeah.
Ron Paul, I just saw him last month. Was it last month already? Yeah, August. Over near the Dulles Airport, where I've seen him three years. I won't say 3 years in a row, but almost 3 out of the past 4 years. And he does not fly anymore. So they drove from Lake Jackson, Texas. And so, if anybody listens to the Ron Paul Liberty Report, that's why they were doing a lot of stuff from the road, or just playing old speeches, old discussions, old interviews or whatever. But I mean, I kind of wish I could be as much of a stalwart as Ron Paul and not fly, or Walter Williams. He doesn't fly, I don't think, anymore.
Yeah.
So while that's very limiting, I mean, they don't get molested for no reason.
And yeah, and I just don't think that the TSA is they're not really protecting us from much, you know. I know that they found now you can't even take any liquids on the plane now. I mean, like I went to Costa Rica with my with my husband.
Yeah, can't no liquids.
I had to throw away a bunch of stuff that I was planning on taking with me because it was like just a little bit over the amount I was allowed to have in my little Ziploc bag.
Oh yeah, no, it's got to be the exact right ounce, amount of ounces, and then, God forbid, it's an ounce over and they catch you with it, because then they're gonna place that dangerous substance in the trash can right next to them and everybody else in line. Look out.
Yeah, and on the way back from Costa Rica, my husband, he likes to collect magnets. He had a magnet in his carry-on and it set off an alarm or something, and they were like, "Oh, this is setting off the alarm," and they pulled out the magnet and they were like, "Are you sure you want to?" It's like, "We can keep it," and I don't know what they were trying to. I mean, they were just trying to make it just so stupidly difficult. And
it's a trinket.
It's like you found what made the alarm go off and realized it wasn't a bomb or a gun or some kind of weapon. It's a magnet.
They can't say bomb. Can't say bomb there.
You can't just hand it to my husband and just let's move on with our lives. It was just so ridiculous, the amount of like you were saying earlier. It's like the amount of people who are brain dead now. It's like we can't think for ourselves or use our mental faculties anymore.
I mean, that's really the consequence, or one of the consequences and end results of just so much bureaucratic overreach and all those top-down orders. People don't and can't think for themselves. They are pretty much programmed to do just, if X happens, then this is exactly what you say. There is no nuance. There is no middle ground. Everything is binary. Everything is black and white. Like, there's no alternative options. It's one size fits all, and everybody is exactly the same no matter what. And can't profile. And God, I hate watching them take up. One of the last times I went through, because I travel a lot for work, and I've obviously been on vacation abroad this summer traveling, and just whatever. I get around. And so I've got plenty of fun TSA times. But so this older couple behind me, it's like they were clearly in poor health, and at least one of them, if not both of them, were diabetic. So they've got their specific, like, very securely packed cooler of everything that they need, and it's very tiny, so it would be probably perfect size. Like, where's the medical exemption? Like, one, they were sent through the detectors, like, forced to stand up when they're really in wheelchairs and just, like, hobbling around. How degrading is that? These people have no shame. And, I know they're just doing their job. Don't tell me that those mouth breathers can't do something else that's, like, actually bettering society and bettering the world and furthering civilization. But, because it's a easy government paycheck, yeah.
Well, I mean,
I don't have any sympathy for those people. Like when the government was shut down this year, don't have any sympathy for those people who were working without pay. I'm sorry,
but not really. That's okay.
But not really, because it's called unemployed. Other people in the real world have to face that, and then when they don't have a job and maybe they don't qualify for unemployment for whatever reason, they've got to deal with that. There's no check. There's no check waiting at the end of a furlough. There is no furlough. It means you're unemployed and you're on the fast track to run out of money.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I mean, when you work for the government, the only reason why you have a job is because the government created a job. It's not because there's necessarily a need for that job. I mean,
God, yeah. It's government dictate.
I think a private security company could do a lot better job than TSA, in my honest opinion.
They would. And they wouldn't be allowed to have a 90+% fail rate.
Mm-hmm. And, another thing that might help a little bit if you want to stop terrorism is maybe not give out public information of things that people can or cannot carry, so that people can strategically bring upon weapons that pass through the detectors. I mean, you're literally giving them the clues they need to pass through a detector.
Since I'm such a paranoid overthinker most of the time, like, I remember being in the Boston Logan airport and they were posting about the procedures or the policies and the regulations and limitations to come there. And it was about like, no longer going to allow laptops or after a certain point, or I can't remember exactly what it was. It was just something, asinine. But I was thinking, okay, well, so you're giving these people a deadline so that they can either take advantage of this beforehand or manipulate their explosive beforehand to a certain size or certain thing that's going to pass that new regulation.
Right.
It's just like, not that I think that there really are that many people just walking around, walking into airports, getting ready to destroy the world. Like, the times there are these very few and far between what you would actually call terrorist attacks, it's not happening every day.
And I think that...
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
And I think that honestly, and this is going to sound bad, but if you don't profile...
Let's hear it.
If you don't profile, you're not going to find them, Unfortunately, there does seem to be a high propensity of Muslim attackers. So if they're coming from a Muslim country, maybe that's where you need to spend a lot of your security time. I mean, I know that sucks. I hate it for those people that come from countries like that are just normal citizens that don't commit crimes, but there are people coming from your countries that are, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys need to look at your own country and maybe call for action there. But
well, what I'd say is the better thing to look for, and is kind of just coincidental, not coincidental, but like, so, when everybody was crying about the quote-unquote Muslim ban,
yeah,
it wasn't a Muslim ban. It happened to be countries that we were very militarily involved, like heavily militarily involved, and had either destroyed or at least had been bombing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a Muslim ban. It was a ban from these countries of conflict, and nobody seemed to care about the conflict that was installed there, and for how many ever years it had been going on. And that's the same thing. Like, if you want to profile, like
Saudi Arabia,
those are some hot button countries
that literally have attacked us before, like Saudi Arabia, for example.
Like Saudi Arabia.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I think that you come from a country that has a history of churning out terrorists, like Syria and Saudi Arabia. Those might want to focus on those two instead of maybe, I don't know, what was one of them, like
the diabetic grandparents that were trying to travel to probably see their grandkids.
I mean, and
then they got searched up and down and all around.
The Muslim ban made me mad because it didn't include Saudi Arabia. That made me mad.
Of course not.
So
because we're too
ridiculous.
Close to Saudi Arabia.
But my thing is that the reason why stereotypes exist is because there is a shred of truth there. And when you are in a security situation where you're trying to, weed out the ones that are the most dangerous, it's kind of like as a physician when you're looking at blood cells under a microscope, you're going to look for the one that sticks out and looks a little different, because that's where the disease is. That's what you need to do, is you need to look at the ones that meet the profile of the ones that have attacked us before. That's probably where it's going, you're going to find the terrorist, or maybe weed that out. Now, it sucks that if you come from those countries and you happen to be like a man in his, late 20s, early 30s or something, and you might meet that profile, that sucks for them. But I don't know what else to do. I don't know what the way we're doing it now is not working. So,
No.
But I might.
The only thing it does now is make lines obscenely long.
And I don't think that these TSA agents are really trained very well. I don't think that they really care that much about the job from what I've seen. I mean, it all goes back to government just isn't doing the job it needs to be doing. A private security company would be a much better option. I think that with that, they'd also have more freedom to be a little bit more discriminatory towards what they're looking for. Sorry, but the world isn't all rainbows and butterflies, and sometimes stereotypes are true, and sometimes when it comes to trying to prevent terrorist attacks, we got a profile. But that's just me. I guess I'm just awful, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. No, I mean, every time I'm in a line, I'm like, and maybe this is the more basic part of myself that thinks so, but I'm like, we should do a little bit more profiling here. Because like I said, I see the people that get searched and over-searched. My bag gets searched all the time. I've been searched for trail mix. I've been searched for having a book. I'm like, oh, have you ever seen one of those things?
And it doesn't even have to be like you're just looking at people from those countries, because as we've seen before, there have been white people that have gone to, like, we need to look at their passports and where they're coming from, because we've seen white people that have been recruited by ISIS or Al-Qaeda, and they've traveled back and forth between different Middle Eastern countries, and that never, like, raised a flag until something awful happened. Or when we're talking about the Boston bombings, I mean, Russia themselves tried to warn us about those brothers, about that whole entire family, about their father. And I don't know what happened, but that got completely just ignored.
Lost in a trash can shaped file bin. I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. And so, like, of course, we're talking kind of about 9/11 and just the sort of our government's plans of action for greater and more security to keep us safe and all that. And it's like, so I don't know why, I hate that it's such a stigma. Like, oh, somebody's going to call me, oh, are you a 9/11 truther? It's like, I just want to know the truth.
Yeah.
However bad it is and wherever it takes you. I don't know why, it's just one of those things where it's, I think, a certain method or agenda-driven programming where wanting to know the truth is seen as you're crazy, or it's something to be. There's a stigma to wanting to know the truth.
Well, there's the thing that I have found is that I believed the narrative for the longest time until I started actually watching documentaries, and actually at the time that it was happening, all these people were on camera saying different stories and saying what they experienced, and I realized the narrative doesn't match up to the people who were actually there and who experienced the things that they experienced, and now that's why we have 9/11 truthers, I think, because now we all start to realize, like, what the news was telling us and then what was being reported on the ground at the time, and how quickly we do forget. Like, the whole never forget. We have already forgotten so much of what the victims that were on the ground were saying to the news. I mean, there's people talking about hearing explosions. Firefighters themselves saying that they saw their fellow firefighters exploding while they were trying to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we just hear that Ben Swan was talking about that a group of firefighters, like actual city firefighters, were coming forward with a request for the investigation to be reopened because of exactly what you just said.
And it's not
things that they were experiencing, their co-workers and colleagues were experiencing.
You sound like a crazy person when you say this, but all you have to do, guys, is Google DuckDuckGo.
Don't Google. DuckDuckGo is supposedly compromised now too, so if you have any other options, let us know.
But I even just
Google.
I just searched on Facebook videos, and I found interviews of just firefighters when it was happening, talking about explosions, saying they saw their own fellow firefighters being killed, and that they were trying to evacuate people. So when you think about it, there was quite a bit of time from when the planes hit the towers and then when they fell. There were some people that could have gotten out. You know what I'm saying? But they weren't able to get these people out because these explosions were happening, quote unquote. So, yeah, I just think there's something crazy about that. Why are people who are literally there saying they heard these things, and why are we not listening to them? Like, why are we dismissing them? And then another question I have is, if you don't believe the narrative, why are people so ready to attack you and say that you are disrespecting the victims of 9/11? I would think that would be
if anything, it's out of their memory and honoring their memory.
Yeah, that we
want to know why are they dead?
We should be questioning all these things. Do I think it was an inside job? I don't know. I can't say that with, with any conviction at all, but I can say that whatever it is that they told us, that our government and the media tried to tell us, it's not how it happened. And I think we are owed, especially those of us, I mean, I didn't lose anybody in 9/11 that I was close to. So for those...
Neither did I, thankfully.
Those that did, they deserve answers. They need to have an explanation for what happened, I think. It's just kind of like, if you ever had a family member go in surgery and you thought it was just a normal surgery, a normal procedure that they were going to do,
routine procedure,
and then you find out they died in surgery. You want to know every step of the way what went wrong. And if the surgeon, you don't just trust what your surgeon tells you. You have a second opinion come and look at the paperwork and look at what was documented about the surgery. And even an autopsy, that's what the whole autopsy is about, is another doctor looking at the body to verify what actually happened.
Well, that's the whole practice, medical malpractice litigation. And so there you go, some private versus public sector comparisons, because in the instance of a doctor doing something wrong, potentially, you never know if they actually are doing something wrong, or the facility itself is out of practice, or their standards are out of line. But that's why you do have that outside investigation, that other set of eyes, to seek the truth, whatever it is. And so, that doctor or that facility, if they were in the wrong, if they did do something incorrectly, they are sued. Mm-hmm. And the families of the victims are compensated.
Yeah.
And, justice is done. But with the government, you can't sue those people.
And who was it that, the whole 9/11 commission, who created that that was the government.
Are you talking about? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was wondering if you were going to specifically tie in Robert Mueller here.
Oh, well, yeah. But basically, it's like the government basically did their own investigation on this instead of an outside independent contractor doing the research. So yeah. And the thing is, what's funny?
Like a cancer cell looking at its own cancer cells going, I think we're all good here, guys.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking I've got like an Osmosis Jones sort of picture in my mind of these like disgusting,
or even worse,
cancerous government cells.
You have a surgeon that patients keep dying on his table every single day, and then he's the one that's in charge of investigating his own surgeries. How dumb is that? Or even doing his own autopsies. How stupid would that be? You would never allow that. But we allow our government to do things like that all the time. So,
speaking of autopsies, Jessie, and shout out to, let's see, our girl, I think Change Repeat. Actually, I can't remember her real name, but, whatever. That's her handle on Instagram, and you should follow her. I think Change Repeat. And so she's the one, I think, or if it was Empress of Meme, I'm sorry, girl, but one of them was the ones who suggested that I listen to The Boys on the Tracks, the story about the Boys on the Tracks. Have you listened to those yet?
I haven't listened to that, but I've heard the story. I heard it on another podcast.
Yeah, and so, like, part of that whole The Boys on the Tracks is about these two boys that were found dead on train tracks. They were hit by trains, and the whole thing is, like, was it an accident? Did they commit suicide, or were they actually murdered? And I think more evidence points to that they were definitely murdered than not. But that whole ring and that everything that kept all the suiciding that kept happening in that small, Arkansas town, so much that came down to the autopsy. The guy who was performing the autopsies, and he was like definitely like a bought and sold government shill. Mm-hmm. Working for the state. The state was led at that time by, one and only, what's his name, William J. Clinton.
Yeah, I wonder who that is.
Wonder who that is. Sounds familiar for some reason. Can't put my finger on it. But anyway, these people at every level of government are able to get away with whatever they want and whatever's convenient for them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And so and a lot of people, especially people on the right, people on the left, different degrees, whatever you are politically, they're able to look at one, portion of government or one small bit of the institution as a whole and say that they don't trust those people. You know, the left might have a distrust in cops more so than the right might have a distrust in just bureaucracies, the IRS generally. But it's like all of a sudden the blinders come up for the other side that they might be more in favor of. And I don't know why people want to put the blinders up voluntarily for something as big and catastrophic and as world-changing. I say world-changing, like, I mean that. Change the world. Change history. Change everything about this life that we're living currently today. Like, as big a deal as 9/11 was.
Yeah. I mean, I'll kind of just like lay out what I think completely changed in America and maybe in the world. But I know that what changed was that our government got more power over being able to spy on us and to be able to detect, like, control how we leave the country and come back to the country and who comes in and who goes out. They knew a lot more than maybe we thought they did. And we're able to gain.
And again, there's no profiling there. It's really
and everybody.
You're being watched.
Everybody's
doesn't
being
matter
watched.
who you are. Anybody listening to this right now, you are being watched, and your privacy is being violated. They know everything that they want to know about you, and then more. They might know you more than you know you.
Yep. We started spending trillions of dollars on our military budget. Our military budget skyrocketed. We started sending more people overseas involved in different countries than we had before. And we still are over there in those countries to this day. And we're probably still, we have troops in countries that we're not even aware of. Because I know that we found Navy SEALs in, what was it?
Niger?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago, and people were like, what?
Yeah.
We didn't even know we had people over there.
We're all over.
Yeah.
We're all over.
Everywhere.
And then on top of that, just a feeling of hatred has emerged against the Middle East, I think. The American public became very distrustful of Arabs and people who are coming from Arab countries and countries that are majority Muslim. And our distrust of Muslims especially skyrocketed. And with that, now because of that, we have this whole like backlash now where it's like if you say anything about Muslims at all, you're an Islamophobe. And now it's almost like we have gone full circle and we have to completely embrace it all. So there's no nuance, regardless.
It's a weird, it's definitely a weird place to be.
There's no nuance. You can't just look at a person from it. Yeah. So, and then I was just going to say that the way that people look at Americans today, when you're going to other countries, we're just seen as these hateful people. And I think that we do this to other countries a lot. We will judge people by their governments, but we are also judged by our government as well.
I know, and that's the worst.
Now, one of the things that I was thinking of, when I was just talking about this, is when Bradley Manning, now, what's Chelsea Manning, when he leaked information to WikiLeaks. I mean, he leaked how our troops were acting when they were just like bombing people, joking around, and how funny it was. Like, I remember the one video in particular that I'm thinking of is the one where they were shooting people outside of a wedding, just gunning people down, and they were just laughing about it and thinking it was hilarious. I think things like that shape how people in the Middle East and how terrorism has just gotten worse since 9/11. I mean, we have this. It could
spread like wildfire because imagine if okay, so like tensions are high with Iran, and people in this country, in America, if they're completely on board with whatever mainstream media is saying, it's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe we could go to a war with Iran tomorrow, and maybe we should. And that's what is in their head. And it's like, so imagine if you saw footage of Iranian soldiers shooting down people walking outside of a wedding, what's a popular wedding venue? I don't know. Just some vineyard in Maryland, like people love weddings and vineyards. So imagine if, this pristine, beautiful wedding reception is taking place, and all of a sudden, those people are getting picked off one by some drone. Mm-hmm. And on the other end of that drone is a bunch of soldiers laughing at us because we're dumb Americans that are just trying to have a nice wedding. And it's like,
well,
that's how terrorism spreads.
It's not even just that. It's the way that they were making fun of these people. It's like they weren't even human. Like they were just stupid little animals.
It's
and
I know.
That's
and
how they're gonna.
awful.
That's how they view us because of how we treated them. If you think for a second, just for a second, how you would want to be treated if a situation happened where we were at war and we were, let's say, one of us was kidnapped by the other side. How do you want to be treated? Well, think about how you treated them, how we treated our prisoners of war. That's how we're going to be treated too. We had no regard during these wars, especially during the drone strikes. We had no regard for women and children at all. I'm thinking of what was the American that was drone bombed by Obama. And he was like proud of himself.
What's his name? Damn. I'm gonna say his name wrong, but God, I feel like I hear Scott Horton saying it in my head right now. American citizen.
I can't remember his name either, but I remember we've killed his dad. I think we've killed one of his brothers.
Oh, Anwar al-Awlaki.
Yes. And
yes.
When and then like I think it was pretty soon after Donald Trump became president, there was another attack that happened in Yemen, and we killed his 8-year-old sister.
Yep.
And they said that they said that she was shot in the neck,
bleeding out,
and she was left to die. She was still alive for a while. She was left to die because she bled out.
Slowly died.
That is how we will be treated by these people. When, if ever, that's what's happening now, actually. What am I talking about? That's what these terrorist attacks do. They kill everyone.
That's what people, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for revenge. You know, I didn't, because you're right, like, when 9/11 happened, I was in 6th grade. I didn't know anything that was happening in the world, and, of course, it just blew my mind that such a thing would take place. But, you know, even later than that, I didn't know or ever hear. It took me years to hear Ron Paul moment that everybody talks about. Because if you're sort of maybe in between, you are my age and you're a libertarian, that was probably your conversion moment when you heard that Ron Paul, Rudy Giuliani, Republican primary debate, and Ron Paul laid out the whole idea of backlash on national television, and it's like. Backlash for what? How many people's eyes were opened with that kind of statement and that kind of his bravery to speak the truth that we didn't want to hear. But I'm so thankful for him and people like him and people like Chelsea, you know, he was Bradley then, Bradley Manning, Julian Assange now, who is actually behind bars in prison, and all he did was tell everybody who was lying.
Okay, and the people, I don't want to demonize necessarily the people that were operating the drones and killing the people, because I think they were victims of a brainwash as well. I think that they were taught, these people, I mean, when you go, ask anybody who's ever gone to boot camp, I mean, you're told, like, your enemies aren't human, you're like, you don't see them as human, you're being indoctrinated from the day you start. So, that's basically what it is. I think that they're just victims of a brainwash experiment. I mean, that's how they can...
The humanity can be taken out of you.
Yeah.
With the right and proper amount of programming. And
evil is inside of all of us. We all have that capability. If we don't nurture the good side enough, that bad side will just keep growing. And, you know, that's just...
That's same for people here. That's same for people in those countries that we've come to fear.
Yeah, and we have to realize
same
these
for people anywhere.
They may come from, I mean, I will be the first to admit, you know, there are some cultures that they just are backwards. They don't have value for humans. They don't have value for women's rights. They don't care about the rights of gay and transgendered people, and I think that's backwards, but they're taught to think that way, and they're just like us. I mean, imagine if we were taught to think that way. We would be just like them. We all have that capability. If we don't extend grace to other people, we can never expect to have grace extended to us in a moment of need. And I think that's really something that we've forgotten. We are Americans, so we think our country is the best country in the world, and we think that we're above judgment, but we're not.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess some people still have the idea, and which 9/11 and other attacks since should be examples and proof that we're not invincible.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we're not always going to be the American empire, which is what our government acts like it is, an empire, which is, you know, the kind of thing that our country actually was founded, broke away from. Ironic. But, you know, the American empire isn't always going to be the empire. Empires fall. And there's a lot of things about what's going on right now that kind of show how we're overextending ourselves.
I think we are. And I think that we're not able to protect, our government cannot protect all of us. I think it's pretty clear 9/11 should have been a wake-up moment.
And they don't want to. They do not want to.
Yeah.
They want to take our guns.
I think that should have been a wake-up moment for a lot of us, but it wasn't. And I don't think we remember that how tragic that day was and how it was allowed to happen somehow. Because, honestly, to pull off something that god-awful took a lot of planning. And there were
a lot of planning and a lot of turned backs.
Our CIA, our FBI was warned of. They were warned, especially of the guys who flew the planes. They were warned and asked questions about them, and they were just ignored.
Those people were being handled.
Yeah, I mean,
and funded.
There's just we can't really go into the weeds of it, but I mean, there's a lot. I'll just say that there's a really good. I think the conspiracy guys have a really good, it's like a 5-hour long episode on 9/11, but I don't think I think you have to go to their Patreon to listen to it, which I think is worth the money if you want to do it, because it's a very detailed thing. And I would have your laptop or your phone next to you while they're talking about some of these things, because they will reference videos that you see. They reference videos I had forgotten about, because I mean, I was 20 years old when this happened, so you know, I was partying, I was in college, I was living my life. I really wasn't taking all of it seriously. But when I listened to some of the videos that they reference, these are just like interviews that were happening from people that were escaping the buildings at the time. And just, how did I miss all this stuff? You know?
I mean, I think it's purposeful. When certain things are ignored.
Yeah, and
then, you know,
there's actually an audio, I think, of Donald Rumsfeld talking about saying something like, "I didn't want to attack the Pentagon" or something like that.
There's something fishy.
There's all kinds of stuff that happened just a couple days before to the day before that we missed.
All those trillions of dollars that were unaccounted for, and just, you know, oh, where did they go?
Right. And
I think September 10th.
If it's not an inside job, if you don't think it's an inside job, that's fine. That's on you. I don't care. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm not going to say that it is. I'm just saying our government is covering up something about it after the fact. I mean, maybe they're embarrassed because they allowed this to happen, but it's just sketchiness. And like you said,
a lot of sketchiness.
Guys, even if there's... Think about how many people live in this country and how many people work for the government. There's, you know, the people that are calling the shots in the government are way less than the people that live in this country. And even when you think about like the CIA, there's so many tiers. There's probably just regular people that work for the CIA that don't have any clearance or know anything at all. I mean, I would just consider them regular citizens. There is no incentive to protect all of us. That's why we, as libertarians or voluntarists or whatever you want to call yourself, we talk about the individual, because you've got to watch out for yourself, because there's not going to be this big government that's going to protect you from things. If you see, you know, you have to, that's why we support the Second Amendment. That's why we want people to own guns, so that you have the chance to protect yourself in case something awful happens. The individual is it. That's it. You're the minority. You're the smallest minority.
The smallest minority in the world.
Nobody is going to protect you like you can. Nobody has the
nobody has the incentive or
desire.
Usually the ability.
Yeah.
None of the above, and especially a slow-moving, archaic, leftover function of some lower degrees of human evolution monster called the government.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's my takeaway from 9/11. Really, was that was definitely it could have been a lot worse if it weren't for certain people fighting back. Like I think of the airplane in Pennsylvania, which some people say never actually existed, but who knows? I do feel like
Who knows?
But I do feel like the people that were on the ground when the towers fell, pulling bodies out, pulling people out of rubble who would have died otherwise, people trying to get people out of the buildings as fast as they can. That is the American right there. That is the American people that I respect, and that is not our government. That's just something I want to get across to. And if you're listening and you're not in the United States, you're not an American citizen, understand government does not equal American. The average American is not the government. When you think, and that's true of any government in any country, governments every single day commit crimes. That's not the average American. So there you go. That's who I really look up to, are the people that put their lives at risk to save others. That's, those firefighters that put their lives at risk, that are dying of cancer now, or have just recently died. Those were the heroes. And it's so sad that our government just didn't take care of them.
And that the whole event could have been prevented.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
100% prevented.
And the Boston bombings too. I think about that too.
Oh God.
I mean, that could have been prevented. That was that's the most recent one I think of, like, that really could have been prevented. Because I mean, we had people from another country that have no reason to even tell us about it. Like they don't
even like us.
The Russians does not like us. Their intelligence could care less about us, but they were warning us that something was going to happen, and we ignored them.
Yeah.
And that's also,
probably some degree of arrogance, probably some degree of it slipping through the cracks. Yeah. Maybe even, honestly, a lot of foiled terror plots actually have some kind of FBI involvement, and they're trying to push somebody to commit a terrorist attack. And then, that's when they say, okay, well, we got you for this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of...
yeah.
So there's a lot of, like, them doing whatever they want, like I said, that is convenient for them. Whether it pushes their message, or whether it, does something with their quota that helps with them getting a bonus, or, just more budget, or more money in the next budget that comes out. These aren't good people.
Yeah, I mean, well,
and they're it's like it's like it said that they'll always take advantage of. They're never going to miss the opportunity to take advantage of a tragic event.
Did you read that article about there's an intelligence test that police officers have to take, and if your intelligence score is too high, like, you won't be qualified.
They won't take you.
Yeah. There's a reason for that. And I think that when it comes to, like, CIA agents and FBI agents, like, CIA agents, they'll do they'll do a whole battery of tests on you. They'll do a personality test, and they're not looking for people who, in the CIA especially, they're not looking for people who are that want to follow the law, that want to be the right you know what I'm saying? People that are like, this is the law, I'm going to follow it. They don't want those type of people. And in fact, if you really think about it, like, when you think about CIA assets, a lot of times they will recruit hackers to
That's true.
They turn them and use them to hack into other countries' stuff. So, yeah, if you really just think a little bit beyond, like, what you're told, just maybe ask some questions, and then think about what you're really believing in. You start to realize that our government is not exactly this, nice guy that we keep thinking it is. And America can be great without the government being great.
They've given us so much evidence. Yeah, they've given us so much evidence to the contrary that they're not good guys. They're not looking out for us. And, while they sure want to tell us what kind of free things that they'll give us or what kind of added security we'll have, and no, none of the above. You've not made us safer. You've not made us safer specifically since 9/11.
You've taken away our freedom in the process.
Yeah.
And now we aren't free.
More freedom.
And now we have people like...
freedom's gone.
Francis Beto York telling us that he wants to take our guns away.
Hell yeah, we'll take your guns. Dude, don't even.
Yeah.
Like, don't even, Beto.
That's not going to work. In fact, that's like been when I didn't listen to the full like Democratic debate, but that's pretty much what it was all about. It was like taking away guns, taking away your private insurance.
Let's take your guns. We're gonna only we can save you from climate change.
Yeah,
that was that 7-hour town hall. Who's got time for that?
Take away your money.
I'll tell you who. Government workers.
Take away your guns. Take away your private healthcare insurance. I mean, it's just all about taking away things from you. I don't even know how people even remotely just relate to the Democrats anymore, because they are just so far from what they used to be. It's just I don't get it.
I don't know, like, because what they're dangling in front of people and their voters and who are unfortunately their constituents is just a bunch of dangling a bunch of shiny objects, and it's like what people don't see. With the other hand, what is being taken away.
Mm-hmm. But we also have to worry about Republicans.
Gross theft.
Yeah. Especially on days like 9/11, we have to worry about Republicans because they really start to show their true stripes when they're talking about, we did the right thing. We should have invaded Iraq. We should have invaded Afghanistan. We had to fight the terrorists.
Well, really, neither of those countries had anything to do with 9/11.
Yeah. And I'm not really sure that it's even wise to even say, like, well, we're fighting Islamic terrorism, because I just feel like it's...
We're fighting selected targets, like whomever basically the Saudis don't like.
The fact that they're Muslim is not really like the most relevant thing. I think it's the fact that they are coming from countries where we've meddled with them so much. We've chosen who their presidents are going to be. We've removed their leaders. We've destabilized them.
Democratically elected leaders that we've kicked out.
Yeah. So like, if I think we did that in like South America, then we'd be like those radical Catholics,
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have done that in like Central America, and the result of those is that we're getting swamped at the border with people trying to escape those broken countries.
That's why we want to invade Venezuela. I honestly believe that's why we won't. We are too smart to do that, because we know that we'll just get more Venezuelans and more people from South America in general just coming. So, at least we learned our lesson there.
Please, I hope so. Well, the good news is John Bolton is no longer in his seat of power. Shouldn't have been there to begin with, but it's a good thing. It's a better day that he is not there anymore.
Yeah, and that scores me some points.
We'll see who his replacement is, but...
That makes me a little bit happier with Trump and his decision. I just hope he doesn't replace, but it looks like he will, replace him with another warmonger. But from what I've been reading is that the people that he's considering are not much better and are closely tied to John Bolton. So good God. Yeah. We'll see.
Lord help us.
Yeah. I mean... Anything else you want to say about the 9/11 tragedy?
Well, since I might be the truther that just wants. I just like and love truth and want more of that, and so I'm willing to play all the mind games to think about all the possible scenarios. And if you are like that and you want to hear some more, and especially on the 9/11 specific topic, which definitely is entangled in past, present, future. Other things going on. I wanted to give a couple shout outs to, I guess, so the theme here is this guy Ryan Dawson. He's a journalist living in Japan, and he's awesome. And he's in particular been on recent episodes of Tinfoil Hat and The Conspiracy Farm. And both Tinfoil Hat and Conspiracy Farm's recent 9/11 related episodes with Ryan Dawson. They're both like different enough, and there's like enough that didn't completely overlap that it's worth listening to both of them.
I thoroughly enjoyed both of those.
Yeah, I mean, so I also Ben Swan. He just launched a new podcast, Truth in Media with Ben Swan. Ben Swan's one of the only good journalists out there.
He talks about a new study that was released from the University of Alaska as well. It was a $300,000 study. I don't know how many engineers were part of it, but they did talk about the collapse of the Building 7. So that's an interesting...
Oh, yeah.
I think he has a link to that study as well, but he talks about what the findings were of that study. So that's something to look at.
Yeah, so, we might sound doom and gloomy sometimes, that, like, nobody's paying attention to these big things. There are a lot of people working just, in less degree of spotlight. And so the truth seekers and the fighters for truth are out there, and God love them.
I also want to mention another tinfoil podcast, which inspired one of my posts on Instagram about the precognitive art. That was episode 40. That was actually, I think, the first 9/11 episode that they did as a podcast, and it was a pretty interesting one. So, if you want to understand where that precognitive art idea came from, it came from that particular episode 40, I believe.
Yeah. Speaking of Instagram, we love everybody who follows us there. Keep sharing our stuff. I mean, only if you want to. It's completely voluntary to do so, but we happen to love you guys for doing it.
Yeah.
Seriously makes our day when all of a sudden we get that notification from Instagram that somebody's sharing our podcast and actually giving us praise, because, I mean, I'm my own biggest critic, so who am I? I'm just like this chick sitting and burning Palo Santo and my tiny little truth corner. Nobody can see it, but, I'm flanked by the greats. But, the love and support we get from people on Twitter, too. I know we get some love there. Just very grateful for it, guys.
Yeah. And, if you want to reach us and you have any ideas for things that you want us to talk about, you can always reach us at voluntaryvixens@gmail.com. And our handle on Twitter is Vixens Voluntary. And you know how to reach us on Instagram, most of you. It's Voluntary Vixens podcast, I believe, on Instagram. And
you'll find us.
Yeah, we're easy to find. And what else? Our Patreon is voluntary_Vixens. Both the V's are uppercase. I think that's pretty much it on how to reach us. And we gave a lot of shout outs to Tinfoil Hat, Ryan Dawson, and
Ben Swan.
Yes, thank you. And I think
brave and stunning Ben Swan.
Yes, I'm so glad he's back.
Oh my God, I'm so glad they didn't off him.
And Ryan Dawson is he's an interesting character. I would definitely give him a listen to. He's unique in a good way.
I know he's got a lot of stuff on YouTube, but they typically monitor that closely and take him down. And he actually went to Google headquarters
in Dublin,
and basically, and got them to remove all the flags and warnings and bans on him, because he was literally not violating any of their standards. But they just decided, okay, this guy needs to be shut up. So anybody, but. Good for him. Not everybody has time or money or resources to go be able to do that. So, but I love that he made a move like that and went and got himself unbanned. But yeah, so I know YouTube monitors his page and takes down a lot of stuff, but apparently he's got a BitChute.com account. Look for Ryan Dawson, and I think since that seems to be...
And he does have a lot of stuff on Patreon as well.
A safer alternative.
Yeah, I would look him up on Patreon. He's part of ANC Anti-Neocon. That's his channel on Patreon. All right. I guess we should wrap it up here. I just want to say, especially for the families and the victims, the firefighters of 9/11 and all the people that lost their lives that day, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry you lost somebody. I'm sorry you lost your own life. And I'm sorry all of it was preventable. And I'm sorry so many people haven't learned their lesson.
Yeah.
Or the truth, or any sort of semblance of truth about the event, and everybody who died that day deserves more and better.
I agree, and I think that at least today, and maybe hopefully through the things that we do, we'll just keep bringing truth to people and making people want to ask more questions so that we can finally get some answers. All right.
Please and thanks.
All right.
Keep it sane. Keep it peaceful. Keep it voluntary. Bye, y'all.
Peace out.